Stop the world! I want to get off. This is a Farty story. If you're following along, you know who Farty is. I have no respect for him because he let me take the rap for a quote-unquote missing Victrola, which was a turntable. He slithered into his father's house and took his turntable. The poor old guy wanted to sit and listen to some old records and reminisce. And when he went there, his Victrola wasn't there. He come over to my house, bawled me out. 3 years later, Farty decided to tell his father the truth. But for 3 years, the guy liked me. I had the keys for his house. And I think he just wrote it off. Well, John got a little greedy and stole something from me. I didn't know what they was talking about. Victrola. It was a turntable. So this is a Farty story. And Farty's got a Volkswagen. And he says, he goes, I bought a radio, and it's a Volkswagen. Years ago, a Volkswagen, not a newer Volkswagen. So he goes, can you look at it real quick? It doesn't work. So I said, all right. So I walk over there, and I see it's a Volkswagen. I said, where'd you get the radio? Oh, I got it at the junkyard for $5. I said, no, you didn't. You didn't get a Volkswagen radio for $5. They get extra money for a Volkswagen because it's a 6-volt radio. And he's looking at me. What do you mean 6-volt? Cars are 12 volt. No, Volkswagen is 6 volts. You own it. You should know it's a 6-volt car. You go to jumper it and you forget that. He's just staring at me. So I go over and he sits in the car and he goes to turn on. I said, is it motorboating? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, is it motorboating? He didn't know what that meant. And he turns it on. It's motorboating. I said, turn it off. I said, that's a 12-volt radio in a 6-volt car. There's not enough voltage to make it fully work. And it goes into like a motorboating thing. He goes, well, how do you do that? I said, well, the clown up the street pulled the same thing with his Volkswagen. Hey, I got a radio. Can you help me hook it up? What kind of car? Volkswagen. Is it motorboating? I don't know. Turns it on. It's motorboating. You got to get it. You got to go back to the junkyard. And he knew the guy. So tell him you want a radio for a Volkswagen. And he did, and it worked. But he had the antenna in there. So Farty had a Volkswagen that never had an AM radio in there before. So he's like, I got it in there really well. Isn't there something you could do? I said, yeah, we could buy an up converter and change the 6 to 12. But I said, at certain stations, you're going to hear the whining of the up converter on the radio. It's not meant for that. Well, anyway, so he takes the radio out and takes it back to junkyard, gets credit, gets a Volkswagen, brings it back. He goes, it's still not working. So I go over there, and I am opening the hood. Now, the hood of the car in a Volkswagen is the trunk. And in there, I can see the radio, the back of it. Where's the antenna? What antenna? There's no antenna on this car. You don't need an antenna. I said, yeah, you do need an antenna. You need an antenna. So I go home. I had one for testing car radios. I bring it back. I stick it in the car, in the radio, and the radio comes on. He's working. He's right away putting in his favorite stations. You pull the button out. That's what those people do. So anyway, he says to me, how much you want for the antenna? I said, oh, that's not for sale. I said, we have to mount that. Oh, no, that's good. That's good. I said, oh, okay, really? Give me $5 for the antenna. So he gives me $5 for the antenna. And I start walking down the driveway. He goes to close the hood on the, which is the trunk hood. It's the front of the car, but it's the trunk hood. As he closes it down, the radio cuts out. He goes, what's going on? I said, oh, I said, for extra money, I'll install the antenna on the body for you. I got $5 from him. I'm already. He's like, what do you mean? Well, and then I was lifting the hood up and down, and like thinking maybe as it goes down, it's crimping the wire. Hilarious stuff. I said that hood of the trunk hood of the car, it's blocking the signal. It's AM. It can't go through metal. And they always stare at me like I'm being crazy, So for a few dollars more, like the movie, I drilled the hole and I mounted the antenna for him. And he's like, that radio really works good. I said, well, it's made for a Volkswagen. There were a couple different brands. The junkyards knew all about it. If you went in and said, I need a radio, and they were good, they would say, for a regular car or a Volkswagen? And then you'd say, what? Well, one's 6, one's 12. And there were radios that had selector switches on the back. They were sold by like Radio Shack and Lafayette Electronics. And you could change the polarity on the radio and the voltage. It was a cheap little transistor radio circuit board in this little metal box. And it didn't have the greatest output, you know, but it did its job. You were able to listen to some tunes. And the other time, Farty had a big Cadillac, and he comes over to the house and he hands me the radio. Says the radio's not working for the Cadillac. So I'm looking at him. I said, "It's a stereo radio." Oh yeah, it's stereo. I said, "Where's the other speaker?" And he's like, "What do you mean? It's stereo. It's got 2 speakers, right?" Well, blah, blah, blah. So he's mad now because I wouldn't go under there and take the radio out. That's a big job. You're hanging upside down. You're trying to not make any mistakes. Any bolts you're undoing are dropping it and hitting you in the head. Anyway, he does it himself. I said, I'll check this out for you, but I'm pretty sure this is good. I said, based on doing other radios, other Cadillac radios, I said, there's another speaker on the passenger side, up under the dash, and it's all brown. It's rotted out from the sun, and it's going to have a blown transistor in it and a fusible resistor. He's just staring at me. I said, that's what you're going to find. He's like, well, that's all. I said, go back under there and you'll see this. Follow the speaker leads. So about 2 hours later, he comes over and the speaker's all brown. It's dried out. It's shot. And I told him, I said, look, when this goes bad, it takes out the driver transistor and a fusible resistor. I said, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. I want to see the money up front. And I went over to Berger Electronics. I told you it's Watts Sessing and Bloomfield Avenue. It's not there anymore. It's in my memories. That's where it exists. But anyway, I changed the transistor, changed the fusible resistor. Oh, we had to go for a new speaker, Spark-O-Matic. Go down to 2 guys and get a Spark-O-Matic. And it all worked. And he only kept the car a short time. Well, he was one of those kind of guys, when he got it working, he'd resell it for another car. And the other guy down the other end pulled the same crap on me. And then finally one day I said something to him. He's putting a trailer hitch on the car, and he's only hooking it to the bumper. And I said, you know, when you go down the highway, you see bumpers on the side with the boat hooked to it. Well, I'm only going short distance. I said, you got to put these 2 straps. No. Anyway, he didn't pull the bumper totally off on the car, but he did mess something up. But he brings the boat back to the block because he wants me to work on it. And I told him I'm not going. He wanted me to drive down the shore and fix his boat. I was fixing all his cars. I said, I'm not doing that anymore. You know, he was good to my father, but you know what? You got to draw the line. He brings the boat. He puts the hitch on it, brings it up. He rings my doorbell. I got it here now for you can look. I went out and looked at it. And I said, the guy told you this was bad right here? Yeah, how'd you know that? I said, this boat's been underwater. Oh, yeah, but I dried it out. Now, listen to me. This whole section right here, the electronics section, it's gone. Well, the guy, he wanted $85. I said, listen to me. It's a boat. $85 is nothing. He's looking at me. I said, you know, when you bought the boat home, you realized it was going to be a deep hole in the ocean, they call it, where you just throw lots of money in it? I said, this boat got filled with rainwater, whatever. It went in the water and the back section around the motor, the electronic ignition center. Salt water is unmerciless. Well, couldn't you clean it up? No, not going to go down that road. So anyway, he got the module. I put it in it. It started up. Now I'm telling you, you can't run the boat. You can't run the motor. Well, it's got to be in water. Like, why? I said, look, you're a car guy. Would you run a motor on a car without the radiator hooked up? No, you wouldn't do that. I said, well, the boat, the part that sits in the water, that pulls water in, and it goes up around the motor, and it cools the motor. And then there's a thing you can hook on there and run it on the garden hose. Know all about that. Did that with another guy's boat. But it was funny with Farty with the up and down with the hood of the car, wondering why it's knocking the signal of the radio out. I'm like, you know, I think he thought it was pinching a wire, and he didn't understand. He didn't understand the antenna for the AM radio has to be outside the car, or like in the window. Later on, they put the AM antenna in the window, and that didn't work well if you're out west. You're out in some of these back areas of the country with mountains. Those AM radios didn't work that well. But it's so funny. He didn't learn anything. Didn't nothing. Oh, he became a history teacher. Well, you would figure that, right? Yeah, yeah. He was a teacher, a history teacher. I used to tease him. I go, yeah, good thing you became a history teacher. I think that's it. All right, that's it.